Welcome to the Becoming Irreplaceable podcast. This is the place where we teach you how to build a sustainable sales and business career that supports your ideal life. Each week, we sit down with high-performing sales professionals, entrepreneurs, and experts who have built wildly successful businesses and have great personal lives. I'm your host, John Israel, author, coach, and keynote speaker, also known as Mr. Thank You. Here, we're going to talk about how to create uncommon loyalty with our clients, how to build unrecruitable teams, and how to access A-list referrals from our network and database so you can have the freedom to live life on your terms. I'm so glad you're here. Let's dive into the show. Hello and welcome to episode 1 of the Becoming Irreplaceable podcast. I'm your host, John Israel, also known as Mr. Thank You. Now, I'm so grateful you're here because when I think about the title of this podcast, right? Like, why does this exist? Who is this for? I think about back when I was 19 years old and I was in college. Unfortunately, we found out my dad was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease, which meant he was going to have to retire early from his job, which meant that paying for college, the burden of that fell on me. My parents could help me get through the first year or two, but beyond that, it was on me. So when I think about what can a 19-year-old do to pay for a university that's, over $20,000 a year, right? Whether you went to college or not, that's a tough order for a 19-year-old kid who had only worked at a movie theater for $6.25 when he was in high school for 1 month. How the heck am I going to make that money? Well, I'll go more into my story later, but I think all you need to know is that I got into sales not because I love sales or love business. My degree is kinesiology. I was going to be a physical therapist or a chiropractor, right? So just getting through college was the only thing I cared about. And I think for a lot of people, when they get into business or they get into sales, it's not just because they love business or they love sales, right? There's something else you love more than that, right? It might be providing for your family. It might be that there is a bigger goal that you have. Maybe you want to retire early and you love the idea of running a business or being in sales because you have a very unique opportunity to have scalability to what you do. Depending on the model of the business that you're in, you might be able to grow recurring revenue. You might be able to stack clients over years upon years and make life a lot easier so you don't have to be out in the field working so hard. Maybe you can build a team so that they can actually run the business while you're kind of living the life that you want. Most people get into business because there's something bigger that they want. And that's where I was at 19. And when I got into that first sales job, I was so uncomfortable. I was so afraid. I didn't think I could do it. But because of the support of people who had done it before me, who worked at the same company, I received the mentorship, the guidance. By the way, not all of it was good mentorship. Some of it was terrible advice that I had to unlearn later in my career. But I'm blessed because of other people pouring into me early into my business career. And it paid off, right? That first summer, I made enough to get through the next year's school. That next summer, I made 3 times that amount and made enough to go through that year's school and save some money. And the year after that, I even grew more. And then beyond that, it just kind of kept going and going and going. And by the time I was in my early 20s, I was making more than anybody in my family had ever made. And an interesting thing happened for me at that point, which is I was very financially successful, but I was broken inside. Because what I wasn't aware of is that so much of my drive to succeed, my drive to achieve was just truly because I thought that it would give me what I want, which was happiness, which was fulfillment. And what was missing for me at that phase of my life in my early 20s was contribution, which was doing something bigger than myself. Because suddenly all these sales accolades, all these accomplishments were just about achieving the next thing, checking the next box, looking good in front of my peers. And after I got to the end of that and realized that it was miserable, it didn't really help me achieve what I wanted. I kind of went on this quest to really understand, like, how can someone build a wildly successful business, right? Like, to be wildly happy and run a business that they love. And so from that moment, I was about 24 years old at the time. I invested heavily, like tens of thousands of dollars a year into personal development, into coaching, and it changed my life. Shortly after that, I wound up marrying my sweetheart. We started a family. We now live in the Dallas, Texas area on a 6-acre ranch. We have 4 kids, and I love my life. And what I can tell you is had I just stayed on the path I was when I was on my 20s of just sell the next thing, achieve the next goal, and grow because you're supposed to grow, I don't think I would be here right now. I don't know if I'd be married. I don't know if I would have the family that I have, because when you're simply driven by your old programming, you're just going to do what's natural. And I'm not saying this is the case for you, but I'm saying this is the case for a lot of people that I've met, which is that I have seen a lot of high performing sales professionals and entrepreneurs absolutely wreck their lives because of this concept that I call perpetual discontentment. Perpetual discontentment, which is the never ending feeling that what we have isn't enough. Now, I'm not saying that you have that problem. I am just saying that most people I meet, most entrepreneurs, most sales professionals typically have that problem. And it's interesting. There's a gentleman that I know who wrote a book called 18 Summers, and he talks about this idea of being an entrepreneurial parent, being a parent who is also an entrepreneur. And it's this gentleman who shares about his story of when he was a kid. He grew up with a father who was an entrepreneur and a lot of friends who were entrepreneurs. And what he found is that most every one of his friends whose dad or parent was an entrepreneur became a drug addict, became suicidal, became depressed, suffered from anxiety. Why? Because their parents worked so hard on their business, they didn't engage with their family. They didn't provide for the kids the emotional needs that we all strive for in our relationship with our parents. Now, you may not be a parent. You may not have kids. You may not even want kids. I'm not here to judge, but I am here to tell you that I see a lot of patterns in the industry of those who are attracted to business, attracted to entrepreneurship, and attracted to sales. And I've coached dozens of these individuals who struggle with that same challenge. And again, that may or may not be you, but here's what I have to tell you is that if you are in business, you will always perpetually be given the temptation to sacrifice your personal values for professional goals. And when you always have that temptation, every day you get to choose. And so for me, because I was able to kind of go through the darkness and get through the other side, I've just committed that I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping people go through the same thing. This podcast isn't for everybody. It's really for a specific type of person. And it might not be someone who has the exact same struggles that I've gone through, but it's somebody who understands that challenge to perpetually have the temptation to sacrifice personal values for professional goals. Because when you're paid on commission, or when you're paid in a role that you can scale up your revenue if you just simply work harder, you're always going to have that struggle of temptation to make a compromise decision. And so here's what I'm here to tell you is that if that's you, you're not bad, you're not terrible, you're also not alone. So we're going to have some amazing conversations on this podcast with some amazing sales professionals, entrepreneurs that I've met over my last 20 plus years in business, and talk about how did they do it? How did they build this lucrative business that allows them to live this extraordinary life? Like, why do we even call this becoming irreplaceable, by the way? Like, why does that title come into play? Because when I was working with my coach years ago, and we were talking about this podcast and like the coaching work that I do, and she was like, well, why is this important to you? Why does it matter? And here's what I've realized is that when you're running a business, if you become so valuable to the people in your life and in your business, they will fight for your survival and success. If you spend the time and invest in the relationships around you, they're going to show up for you, especially when times are hard. And that's what I needed at times in my life. And when we think about the future of the world right now, with AI and technology and automation, there's such a leaning into allowing technology to show up for people in areas where we historically as humans have shown up. And I know you know that's true. I know you've seen that. And I can't tell you how many countless entrepreneurs and professionals that I meet at conferences that I speak at that are devastatingly worried about how is AI going to affect their jobs? Are they still going to be able to sell real estate or do mortgages or whatever their particular industry is? Like, am I still going to have a job? And I think that the answer is yes, but we need to keep evolving ourselves to stay in relevant service to those that matter to us. You can't automate every aspect of relationships. You can't just delegate a hug or concern for somebody to your CRM. It's how you show up personally, professionally, online. We're going to talk about personal branding and social media. We're going to talk about how we leverage our technology and tools in ways that are going to empower us to be effective in our jobs, but also in a way that we don't lose the heart and soul of just what it means to be a human being, connect with another person, and the joy that it is to serve people. Like, if you've been in business for long enough, you've probably had an experience where you've deeply served somebody with your product or service, and it might bring a tear to your eye because that's why you do it. So that's why we started this show. It's a little bit about me. We'll unpack a lot more of that over the episodes to come. I'm grateful you're here. Look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care. That's it for this episode of the Becoming Irreplaceable podcast. But here's some great news. If you subscribe to our show and leave us a comment or review and send a screenshot to team@mrthankyou.com, we'll send you free access to our members-only course, Database Reset. It's an amazing training that's going to show you how to re-engage your network and grow your business. So subscribe, comment, and send us a screenshot to team@mrthankyou.com, and you'll get free access to the Database Reset training. And please share this episode with friends so we can impact more people like you. And just remember, great relationships aren't meant to be, they're made to be. We'll see you on the next episode of the Becoming Irreplaceable podcast.